Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to take a look at a game by the name of Yangtze, named after the famous river in China. And this is an economic trading game. I would say it's light to medium weight game, designed by Reiner Knizia, who's a pretty famous German board game designer. And this game, I should note, the version I have, it does not come with English rules. It comes with rules in 7 other languages, just not English. I had to import this copy, but I did do a rules translation, which I did post onto Board Game Geek, which I believe is correct. If you notice any problems with the rules, just let me know. This is, like I said, a light trading game that you're going to be trying to simply buy and sell a number of tokens to try and be the player who has the most money at the end of the game. Let me take a minute to show you how it plays, and I'll come back and let you know what I think about it. So here I've set up Yangtze, and this would be set up for 2 to 4 players. Let's just say this is a 2-player setup, although it's only a partial setup. Each player is going to get at the start of the game one of these money trackers, which you'll set to 30, and as you gain or lose money, you'll slide that around. You might want to use some paper money or some coins from another game. That's not the most elegant solution, I find. They will also get a player screen, which looks the same on the front, but on the back it shows you a number of scoring information tiles, which is also reprinted on the board, which is nice. And then each player will also get a set of these 6 cards, which are identical. Each player will get 6. I'll explain them in a moment. Those are generally one-time use cards that will augment your abilities. So this game is going to be casting you as Chinese traders. At the start of the game, you're going to fill up this with random goods tiles, which are in 2 types. There are essentially luxury goods, which are pottery. Those have a blue background, and then common goods, which have this aqua background. And those will get filled up here randomly at the start of the game. And this will essentially form a marketplace. So you're going to be buying goods from this marketplace and then selling them to try and have the most money at the end of the game. The cost for any of these tiles is going to be listed on the board. So for example, this one here at the end will only cost 4 coins, whereas these new ones here will cost 10 coins. So they'll get cheaper over time, because if you buy one, you'll simply take it from there, slide those down, and then draw a tile from the bag to replace it. So on your turn, what you're simply going to do is you're going to first have the opportunity to sell a pack of tiles or bundles of tiles. You could sell more than one if you so desire. And the way that the bundles work in this game is that you can create a bundle of either like tiles. So for example, here I have 3 bamboos. They're different colors, and that would be a bundle of 3. And the value of that would be shown here. So those are common tiles because of the background color. And a set of 3 of those is going to be worth 20 money. So at the start of my turn, I could turn those in. They get discarded out of the game, and I would get 20 money, so I would adjust my slider. Again, the same thing would apply is if you were selling these luxury goods tiles, which are just different forms of pottery. So, for example, here I might have these 2 potteries here. Those would be a set, and 2 of them would be worth 15. But you want to hold out as long as possible when you're selling, because as you add tiles to that, each tile boosts the amount. So for example, 5 luxury goods is worth 60, 6 of the common goods is worth 70. So if you could really wait to sell those, you'll be making a bundle. No pun intended. So yeah, over the course of the game, that's the first thing that you could do on your action, is to simply sell a bundle of tiles that you've collected behind your player screen. Those are secret. Your money is open information. The cards that you have is also open information. And then the second thing that you could do, and again, both of these things are optional. Selling is optional. Buying is optional. Second thing that you can do is you can buy one of these. So let's say I'm collecting these urns. I could buy this. It would cost 5 money. And then I would just adjust my slider, pay my 5 money. And then I would draw another tile from the bag, slide everything down to fill in the gaps. So that is your basic turn in this game, and it's just going to work like that. But there are some complications. So first of all, there are 2 additional types of tiles that I need to explain. The first type are office tiles. So you're going to get branches of these various offices, which you're going to be collecting for endgame points. So let's say somebody had taken their turn, they bought this tile, and then they draw out of the bag this green office tile. So these office tiles, they have 2 different characteristics. There's a color, so this is a green one, and it has a type of building. So this little, I guess, pagoda, or this little office. It doesn't go here. Instead, what happens is there's going to be an auction. It's a simple auction. It just keeps going around. The first player could bid or they could pass, and you can only bid the money that you have on hand. So you're always encouraged to stay, liquid with your money. So at the start of the auction, all you're going to do is you're going to announce how much you want to bid. The next player could pass, or they could raise your bid, and it just keeps going around the table like that until players have all passed, or if all players pass, it gets discarded, or until there's a winner. The winner pays that money, other players pay nothing, and the winner claims this tile. And then you simply draw another tile to go in this space. So let's say you would draw this, and that would fill the space. That would just become the next player's turn. So a player's turn is that simple. There's one other type of tile that you'll want to get, or that will come up, I guess, during the course of the game. And these are these ruler tiles. So you can see there's a variety of those. And those are just going to have an effect that affects all the players. And they will also serve as a round timer. So as these come out, they simply go in the next available space here around the board. And then once all of the spaces around the board, so all 12 of them are drawn, that will indicate the last round of the game. So you'll simply initiate, you'll evaluate rather the tile's effect, and the game will immediately end. So you're not quite sure when the game's going to end. The game could end with some good tiles still left in the bag. So that's the way. Those are essentially what's going to happen. These effects have various things that happen. So for example, this one here, for every office of that type that you've got, you'll get 2 money, and that would affect all players after that comes out. This one here, for example, allows you to swap a tile from behind your screen with one that's in the river, which is good for collecting sets. This one here, I'll explain in one moment, but it allows you to repurchase a liquidity card. So I'll explain those cards in one moment. This one here and this one here are basically taxes. They allow you to, or they force you to pay 1 money for every 10 coins that you have, or for every office that you have. And this one here is like a wild. It allows you to take the effect of any tile that's been previously drawn. Any one of these ruler tiles that have been previously drawn. So those are all going to come out over the course of the game. Those are guaranteed to come out, but again, all the goods tiles are not guaranteed to come out. So most of the tiles will come out, but not all of the tiles, because of that mechanism. Alright, so essentially that's really the way the game works. Is these are going to interrupt your basic action of selling then buying on your turn, as will these various things, which will be scored at the end. I'll explain endgame scoring in a moment, but first I'll explain these cards rather. So every player, like I said at the start of the game, gets a set of 6 identical cards. 3 of them are these liquidity cards. So there's a 20, a 15, and a 10, and you could turn these in at any time to simply get money. So for example, if I turn this card in, I just discard it out of the game, and I get 20 money, then 15, then 10. But if you have these at the end of the game, you never turn them in, they're going to be worth 30 money. So again, there is one tile here, one Emperor tile. This guy here, his ability is, he allows you to pay the money that you got when you bought the liquidity tile, or when you gave away the liquidity card, to get the card back. So for example, if I had sold this to get 20 money earlier, I could then spend the 20 money to get this back, which will be worth 30 points or 30 money at the end of the game. I guess the other ones that you have here, this one allows you to initiate a sale at any time. For example, during an auction, if you needed money, or if it was another player's turn, you could just go out of turn and break sequence by once per game playing this card, and that could be really important during those auctions. And then these two simply allow you to manipulate this part of your turn where you're claiming a tile or buying a tile. This one allows you to buy one tile without paying the cost. So if you really needed, let's say, this blue teapot, you could just spend this card and spend it, instead of spending $10 to take that. Or this one here, it allows you to buy 2 tiles at once during your turn. So if you wanted both of these, you could spend the cost, the 13 money, to take both of those tiles. If you use this while you use this, you only get one of them for free, just to be clear. So those are simply the cards, and you're going to have the ability to use those during your turns. And again, the game will go until the 12th ruler tile is drawn, and then you're going to have a final scoring. And the final scoring is simply the first thing that happens is that you have any bundles that you still have behind your player screen, you'll be able to sell as normally. So you'll cash those all in for money. Secondly, you'll have the option to compare the offices that you've got. So there's two ways those are going to be looked at. So first of all, you could turn in sets of 2, 3, and 4 of a given color. So if you had, so for example, 5 yellow or green ones, you could turn those in for 50 points. You wouldn't be able to make a second set out of those. And if you had 3 brown ones, you could turn those in for 30 points. So that's pretty simple. And then you'll look, and there's essentially majority scoring for who has the most of the 4 different types. So regardless of the colors, the 4 different types of buildings, the person with the most of those will get 30, and the person with the second most of those will get 15. There's a tiebreaker built into that. So for example, if I had one and another player had one of these buildings and nobody else had any, you would look at the number of dots. Whoever has fewer dots will break the tie. So this player would get the 30 points, this player would get the 15. After you evaluate all 4 building types of those, you simply will give each player who still has liquidity cards 30 points for each, and the player with the most money at the end of all that is going to be the winner of Yangtze. Alright, so that is Yangtze, and I will preface this by saying I've only played the game twice so far. I've played at both 2 and 4 players, and the game works very well, I think, at each player count. You're going to have much higher scores in a 2-player game just because you'll do it a lot more buying and selling, but the game does play well at 2 players. And this is a game that I think is going to appeal to a lot of people. I know that sometimes Reiner Knizia gets slagged because his games aren't the most thematic or the most complex, but this is one that I think is really, somewhere between a family game, and a medium weight game. Because although the rules are very simple, you're only going to be selling and then buying on your turn for the most part. There are enough complications that you're going to feel a lot of angst about how much money that you have. You always want to make sure you have cash on hand in case a tile comes up for auction, and sometimes multiple ones of those might come up for auction over the course of a round, since there's going to be, in a 4-player game, 3 other players drawing tiles. So you want to make sure you have enough to buy the tiles that you're trying to collect over the course of the game. At the same time, you're incentivized to just build your sets as long as possible before you sell them back, because that 4th tile is going to be worth more than the 2nd tile within a set. So there's this really interesting tension that's there from the very start of the game almost. Maybe not the very start. At first you have 30 money, you think you buy anything in the world, but when you realize you're going to be spending at least 4 money every turn, that quickly dissipates, and you're going to be feeling that financial tension in this game, even though it's a relatively simple game. And then there's also a lot of interactivity. That market is going to be a shared market. So if there's a tile that you really want and it costs 7 money, especially in a 4-player game, you're not sure that that's going to still be there when the turn comes around, so you might want to pay more for it. However, paying more for a tile is really painful in this game than just taking the cheapest thing on display. So it's a game that I think has to a certain degree relatively obvious strategies. It's always better to buy a tile for cheaper and form a set out of that if possible, and to a certain degree you're going to be at the mercy of what comes out of the bag. But at the same time, choosing when to participate in those auctions, when to spend more for a tile, when to use those cards, that's going to make this game require some planning, because you could get caught, not necessarily a total death spiral, but you don't want to be caught in a situation where you're cutting out some of your profits because the margins are really tight in the game. I think it's an exceptionally well-designed game, which isn't surprising considering it's from Reiner Knizia, and it's one of his more interesting games of late. I would say that the game that this most reminds me of is perhaps Raw, although this has more computation insofar as you're going to be buying and selling for actual money, whereas in Raw that gets abstracted out by those bidding tiles. But at the same time, it has that shared market, and there's a lot of the same tension about what's going to come out of the bag. So that's a game that I really love, and this compares relatively favorably with that. I think I would have to play it a few more times to see how much longevity it has compared to that game. But so far, this is a game that I really do like. It does have room for multiple ways of scoring, so it's not just buy low, sell high. There's a little bit more to it, especially like I said, because of those other building tiles that you're trying to collect, which you're trying to form sets of, and the variable end game condition does make a little bit more tension, especially at those last few bag pulls when 11 tiles are out and you're worried that 12th one could come out at any time. There's real stress to try to maximize those last few turns. So I really do like that about the game. I generally like the game in general. It's a game that I think does not have U.S. distribution lined up, so you would have to import it at this point. Like I said, I did do just a Google translation of the rules that I do think is absolutely correct. I've played the game with those rules, and I don't see anything that does seem off about them. But if you notice something, please let me know. But in general, the language on the board and whatnot is all in English, so there's no reason that you couldn't import this game. None of the components have any language requirements on it, and it's a game that I think that absolutely deserves U.S. distribution. I hope that does get picked up and distributed more widely, although it does seem to be pretty widely available in non-English speaking countries. So in all, I would really recommend Yangtze. I think that's a great game, and again, it's one that is heavier than a lot of recent Knizia games, and one that I think is likely to appeal to both family gamers and gamers that like something a little bit more crunchy. There is the room to analyze a little bit more in this than normal, even though there is this random element. So those are my thoughts on the game, and thanks for watching.